thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here with us and to know that what you're going to take away from here and possibly put into classrooms or with students is going to make such a big impact in their lives and the lives of the teachers and the school community as a whole. So thank you for being here.
And just when we previewed again or reviewed the Project Read Your Hand website yesterday, we know that our whole goal is to bring in our community, our church, our nonprofits. And so you are one person, but if you go back and you spread this message to those that you work with too, then we will be able to touch even more children's lives.
So in our hour together, we're going to start with just a few introductions, tell you a little bit about ourselves, hone in on our purpose for our time together. We're going to just do a little quick info session on what is the science of reading and what does that mean for your support in schools. And then we're going to think about literacy support. What are some things you can do with students? So my name is Audrey Goninen. I work with the districts in just south of the Charlotte area. So all 4 of the York school districts and Chester and Lancaster school districts as a literacy specialist with the Office of Instructional Supports.
I'm in that same office. I am Kim Camp, and I work with Anderson 2, 3, 4, and 5, Abbeville, Lawrence 55, and Abbeville. So we have our North Star here that is very important to all of us in South Carolina, that at least 75% of students will be at or above grade level by 2030. And we know the more work that we do on the in those schools laying that foundation of literacy, the higher that number will even go. So our office has a mission. And if you'll take a minute to read that, if you can. If not, I'm going to help you out. The mission of the Office of Instructional Supports is to support high-quality early learning, literacy, and math instruction for all students by building the capacity of educators and collaborating with students and families.
Okay, so within our office or in the building and also in legislation, you have heard about science of reading. And a few years ago, Act 114 was passed that required training for teachers within the field of the science of reading. And there are lots of definitions that float around maybe in social media around what is the science of reading, but I'd like us to hone in on that top sentence there of what is it. And so it is a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. So it's not something you do, it's just all of the research that is out there. Vast in that it is 40 plus years of research. This is not something that's brand new. This has been confirmed through multiple studies of what's going on in the kid's brain and what does that mean for how we instruct them.
So with that being said, a lot of people think that science of reading is scientists coming in a classroom with white capes and coats and all that to tell them how to teach. But really what it is the things that we have known from the past, and then we are pulling in the brain research. And the video that you're going to watch is going to talk about how that brain does. But what we have learned from the past is the science of linguistics, and that is our speech teachers who have been in schools and have a wealth of knowledge to share. It is also our school psychologists who work with a lot of testing, and they would come to meetings and they would share information about the assessments that they have given. And then we have just good science of education. What does it mean to collaborate? What does it mean to plan? What does it mean to teach explicitly? Just what is good instruction? So really you're thinking about those 4 sciences when you think about the science of reading.
What if you couldn't read? How would you perceive words if reading wasn't possible? For anything you encountered with words, you would just see a series of symbols with no meaning or purpose. In fact, humans are not meant to read. Our brains did not evolve for reading. Our brains are extraordinarily organized from the time we are very young for speech processing. The same is true for our vision. Reading, on the other hand, is not innate and requires the collective activity of many areas of our brain. Babies already have a sophisticated spoken language and visual system, but to learn to read, our brains must be trained to connect our visual system with our spoken language system, actually changing the way our brain codes phonemes and connects those sounds to meaning. We know this because researchers have used imaging techniques to show what actually happens inside the different parts of the brain when a person reads. When we read the word ingredients, for example, it activates the occipital lobe in the back of our brain in the same way any other visual stimuli would. This visual area in the brain instantly analyzes the visual features of the word. From here, it quickly moves into an area that cognitive neuroscientist Dr. Stanislaus Dehaene calls the brain's letterbox, or visual word form area. This is where we store our knowledge of letters, recognize single letters, letter combinations, whole words, and acquire the knowledge of patterns of the written system of a language. Scientists have measured the activity in brains of literate and illiterate subjects and detected brain activity in various parts of the brain that are changed by learning to read. Brain scans confirm the letterbox is only activated in people who have learned to read, and it will only activate for the known letters in direct proportion to reading scores. When we learn an alphabetic language, we change the way our brain codes the sounds of speech, attributing these phonemes to different letters. This process literally changes the neurological processing that happens in the visual cortex in our brain. But it doesn't stop there. Learning to read requires first recognizing the letters and how they combine into written words in the letterbox area, and then connecting them to the coding for speech sounds. Reading and comprehension is achieved most efficiently by first teaching letter-sound correspondences. Consider the word ingredients from our recipe. The word is associated with its meaning in the temporal lobe. At the same time, the brain detects the sounds needed to say the word. Once a child can recognize letter-sound correspondences, the anatomy of the brain changes and creates a whole new modality for language input. The child can identify words and recognize them auditorily to then access their meaning. This process develops yet a second route to support reading, going from vision to meaning. Hence, the idea that there are two routes of reading is a critical piece of all models of the process of reading. We know that reading is not hardwired in the brain, but scientists have studied what happens inside the brain to become a skillful reader. Attention, active engagement, error feedback, and consolidation are the four pillars that Dr. Dehaene calls the secret ingredients of successful learning to help students learn more efficiently. Because the brain can change to learn new things, reading teachers should employ explicit instruction methods that strengthen the neural pathways and allow students to become strong and successful readers.
Okay, so there's a lot of information in that about what's happening in the brain, but some of the big takeaways are we are not born with brains for reading, and so teachers do some incredible work to make new neural pathways in our brain for reading. And what we want to do are give you a few tips, a few tricks that you can put into your volunteering tool belt so that you can help support also building up new neural pathways in students' brains.
So we want to introduce you to Scarborough's Reading Rope. Some of you might be familiar with this or have seen it in different publications. This is one of the big takeaways, one of the big tools that we think about when we hear science of reading. But just like Audrey said, this information has been around quite some time. She said 40 years. If you look at the date on here for Scarborough's Reading Rope, this was crafted in 2001. And Hollis Scarborough actually did this for parents. She was talking to them and saying, what does it take to be a reader? So she's just started mapping out different pieces because being a reader takes a lot of work and a lot of time. Just when we always talk in early literacy about how important it is to have babies on the lap that we're reading to and we're talking to, that oral language plays a huge part in that. And then we get down to what does it take to actually read a book. So as we go through today, we're going to talk about Scarborough's Reading Rope. We're going to get you to actually write down some of these key facts. You've got a blue pen and a red pen in your bag right now and a little index card. We're going to call that card our bookmark, and as we go through and Audrey talks through parts of the rope, I'm going to actually make one here, and then you'll have the opportunity to do the same thing on your paper.
And that way, if you're out in schools, you'll have your bookmark, so it'll be a handy dandy resource of, oh, I know what I can do while I'm meeting with students. Okay, so we're going to start with language comprehension. These are the strands of Scarborough's reading rope at the top, and this is all about oral language and the components that are necessary to comprehend what we're reading. So we want kids to be able to say, we can understand spoken or written language. So if you take out your red pen, that will match the red strands, and you can begin by putting a label at the top of yours for language comprehension. Okay, when we think about language comprehension, there are certain texts or books that we will use more frequently to support those strands. These are books like we see over here, real rich, authentic books that you may, if you're volunteering in a classroom, be handed a book and said, can you go out in the hallway and read this with a couple friends? So that's one thing that you might be doing as a volunteer. It might also be poems or magazines. It could be informational text as well. And this is a great time where you can be having discussions with kids about their background knowledge, some of the vocabulary, and we'll go into those in a moment. And then ways students respond is just through conversation. Maybe you'll have them draw a picture of what they're thinking about, or maybe they can write something out if they have those skills. Okay, so let's start with that first strand. Background knowledge. This is something before reading. We want kids to have something they can hold on to, some Velcro they can make to the text they're going to read. So for example, if maybe they brought you the book Diary of a Worm, you're going to take a moment and just flip through it and kind of gather your understanding of what it's going to be about, and then you're going to talk and ask questions about the topic. So for this one, I might be asking kids, what do you know about worms? Where do they live? Since it's Diary of a Worm, maybe I want to make sure they know what a diary is. So those are all questions that I could ask them. If they don't know, then that's a great time to help build up background knowledge. So I was volunteering with a student, and he had a text that had the word wren in it. He didn't know what a wren was. So real quick, pulled up wren on my phone and showed him a picture. And so now he has some Velcro to hold on to while he's reading to be like, now I know I can make those connections there. So on your card, you might just put a little note around asking questions about their background knowledge of the topic. So that's a first strand that we want to dive into. We also want to make sure that kids have an understanding of what the words mean, their vocabulary. So again, before reading, as you're just doing a quick peek through it, you might notice some interesting words. In this book, the word bait, compost, bother, sneak were words that I noticed were within this text that might be ones I want to talk to the student about to make sure they understand them before we're asking them to comprehend. And here are a few things that you can do with the student to help them hone into that language. So for, say, example, the word sneak, you might, okay, one of the words in this book is the word sneak. I'm going to say sneak, now you say sneak. And so you say it, and then you have the kids say it. So now they're verbalizing it. Then you can show the word in the text. Maybe you have something you can write it out with, show them this is the word. Then you want to define it in a kid-friendly way. Then you can act it out or show a picture in the book that models that, just showing them, oh, this is how I sneak down the hallway. And then finally, use the word in a sentence. Maybe it's a sentence right from the book, or maybe you have them think about it in a new way. So now they're able to apply that word in a new situation. All of that is prompting them and prepping them for comprehending the text you're about to read together. We then have the third strand of the language comprehension components, and this is around language structures. That's a fancy way of saying, are they able to comprehend at the sentence level? And sometimes authors, they use more complex language or sentence lengths that can make it hard for kids to really understand even what the sentence is meaning. So as you're reading, this is a during reading activity, you can stop and ask, well, who's telling the story? How do you know that? Who is we referring to? That was something I never thought about as a teacher. I'm reading a text and there's a use of a pronoun. He did this, and then I realize, oh, my goodness, my students may not have never known who he was referring to. That can cause some major comprehension difficulties. So now we have 3 strands of language comprehension. Let's move into the fourth one, verbal reasoning. Again, this is a fancy way to think about how do we combine all of those sentences, maybe in a paragraph, in a whole text, to really comprehend at a deeper level. This is where inferencing gets into play here. So as you're reading, or even after reading with a student, you're going to want to ask them more questions. Well, why do you think Spider had a hard time digging? Do you think Worm will be able to walk upside down? Why or why not? They're having to do some inferential thinking. And then finally, the last strand of language comprehension is literacy knowledge. And this is ensuring that kids have an understanding of how books work, but also more about the various genres. So, thinking first about how books work. Sometimes this is called concepts of print. And that is, does the child know how to hold the book? Do they know where to start reading? Turning left to right, or moving left to right and then turning pages. Pointing to words while they're reading. For really young readers, or those who have difficulties with learning to read, this may be a place that you just work on with them. It's also inclusive of the types of books, and knowing that a fictional text is going to sound different than an informational text, and it's going to have different components. So really talking about, oh, this is a fiction book. It's not going to be true, but you're going to see characters. You're going to see a setting. There's going to be a problem and solution, and talking about those things. Versus nonfiction is going to tell us information. And so we're going to have other text features like photographs and headings or captions and graphs, and we can draw meaning from that as well, so talking about those. And all of those strands are going to work together to really hone in on their ability to comprehend, whether they're able to read the words and they're comprehending what those words mean, or you're reading it to them and then they're listening and building that knowledge.
So I'm going to go back to our card, what we've just talked about, and give you just a little bit more information with that from what Audrey said. This is really, I'm reading with students. I'm reading to them. And so if you think about that, and with that book on your lap, this part of the strand is really where we build that love of reading. So if you want to put a little heart right there with that, where we're pulling those pieces in. If you think about this part right here, she said these things, if you draw that little line, these happen really before reading. And you don't have to give a lot of information. As adults, we can look at the front of that book and see, oh, there's a pig on here. So I bet this book is going to be about a pig, and he must like pancakes. Do you like pancakes? I mean, just keep it very, very, very simple as that. She talked about vocabulary, and you can flip through and find no more than about 2 or 3 words to define, because as you're reading with it, you might discover other words that you need to, but before, just do, I would say 2 to 3 words just to get started with that. She talked about this one being during reading, because you're going to talk about specific sentences that are going to show up. Verbal reasoning, she said after, it can be at the end of a page, it can be at the end of the book. She said this one was during and after. And then literacy knowledge, we've put on here during and after reading, but as she was talking, I was thinking, this one, it can happen in all 3. Because if I'm talking about a pig eating a pancake standing in the kitchen before I even get started, that's probably going to be a fiction story. And I might say that as we're going through. So this one, just think about I'm reading with and to. A lot of times teachers will ask you to go out with the book, and students cannot read that on their own, and that is super fine for you to read it once with them, to them, and then read it with them to get that. So what does this look like in action? We were lucky enough to find from Robert Smalls Leadership Academy here in South Carolina, in Beaufort, South Carolina, this actually happening. And so if you will take just a few minutes to preview this.
He's saying, look what I found. Please read me this book, just like you and I are doing, right?
Sharing their love for reading, volunteers with Reading Discovery come to Robert Smalls International Academy twice a week to read with students in pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade.
A lot of the research says get to the child as early as possible. And the earlier you get to that child, the greater the return on investment. But also, in those early years, their attitude with respect to reading is developed. And so what we really hope that they begin to love reading, because the payoff for learning to read is enormous. Some people say to me, after breathing, reading's the most important thing.
The seahorse is a little fish with an unusual shape. See his tail?
Volunteers work with the students for about 30 minutes. The kids get to pick out a book that interests them, read it with the volunteers, and then complete an activity about the book they just read.
We pull a sentence from them. Well, what was your favorite part? What do you want to share about this book? And whatever they say, we write it and spell it out for them, and then they get to do an illustration.
And we're constantly talking to them, asking them, for example, okay, in the book so far, Johnny did this. What do you think he's going to do next?
Did they match?
No!
So the whole attempt is for us not to do much of the talking and let the kids do all the talking.
The school is excited to have the volunteers here reading with the kids.
I like to read because it's fun.
So they won't be washed away.
We've said repeatedly at Robert Smalls that it takes a village to be able to raise our children, and part of the village is Charles Cookson's Reading Discovery Group.
Title page.
Title page, very good.
And not only are they helping teach them how to read, but the love of reading. To become lifelong readers is a goal for us at Robert Smalls International Academy.
Reading Discovery also reads to students at Broad River Elementary School. At Robert Smalls International Academy, Ron Lopes, Beaufort County School District.
Very good. Oh, there's that frog that you like.
So we're going to give you a little chance to take a look at some books. And so we just have some random good read-alouds. And so I'm just going to pass those out. You're not putting you on the spot or anything. But if you had that imaginary child sitting right beside you as you were reading this book, if this book came out with them in the hallway, what might you say? What might you do? in the name of the top half of the rope, the language comprehension. Think about background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, that verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. And so just take 2 or 3 minutes, because that's what you would have to preview before it was you on the show with the boy or the girl sitting there as a reader. Did you see some vocabulary words that you would probably stop and talk about? Can somebody just name 1 or 2 of those words?
I would talk about the word 3, and I would ask if they knew the number 3, and I would also talk about the colors and the green grass, and talk about because mine are the billy goats.
Yes.
So I would talk about the billy goats eating the grass, and I would talk about that being the food for the billy goats, and then I would ask if they knew what a billy goat was.
Exactly, that's perfect. So you are building the background and vocabulary all in one. Awesome. Anyone else?
Mine is the gingerbread man, so I would just ask them, like, have you ever had them? Do you know what a gingerbread man is? Have you ever had the gingerbread man cookie? Ever made them? Ask them if they know about a gingerbread house. Make different connections with the gingerbread.
And that's just by looking at those pictures on the front cover and having that good, rich conversation to get started. Awesome job. So you can see where we put this together that we have those 5 big components from our Scarborough's Reading Rope, which is a part of the science of reading. And so we want you to turn right now to a partner and just talk for just a second or 2 about one idea that you have gleaned so far from what we've talked about from language comprehension.
All right, well, let's come on back together. We're going to transition now into the bottom half of the reading rope, which is on word recognition. So you can change out your pen. So now you're matching the blue. And this is all about students being able to say they can read, or the fancy teacher way would be to say decode, and that they can write or encode words accurately and automatically. We want them reading the words correctly, and we want it to become automatic, because as it becomes automatic for them, they're not using a lot of mental energy to focus on figuring out the words. Now they can focus on what's most important, which is the meaning of the text. So there are a few skills that we can do to work on word recognition. First, we want to think about the types of text. These are going to be completely different now than what the ones you just saw. They're often called decodable text or decodable readers. These are for beginning readers, but sometimes when we say beginning readers, we think about little friends. Beginning readers can be older students if they're having difficulty. So it's not based on age, but really based on what is their need as a student. And this is where before we were saying how maybe we as the adult would read the text to the students, and then we'd read together. This is all about the student reading. We want them practicing. And then we're going to be there to be their encourager, but also to give them corrective feedback as needed. Okay. All right, so very first strand of word recognition is phonological awareness. This is about the sounds and the words. So even before they even look at any words, you can be doing work to think about the sounds that are in those words. So say this is the decodable text that they're going to read, and you see, oh, it has the word swishes in there. That might be a word you want to talk about with the vocabulary. What does it mean, swishes? Act out what it means to swish back and forth. But you might also want them to say it, and then you could say, oh, let's clap the syllables. So syllables are the part of the word that has a vowel sound. So you would just say swish is, and then have them do it. So that's one thing we can do. We also want to focus on the individual sounds of the words. And those are called phonemes. So for that, we can have them tap out the sounds. So say the word is top, you could show them, ooh, say the word top. They say the word, and then you can tap out t, a, p, and have them also tap out with their fingers. This really helps them to hone in on those individual sounds, which is going to make it helpful for them for writing as well. Now, just as a reminder, it's not about the number of letters in the word, it's just about the sounds. So for example, hill has 4 letters, but it's still just 3 sounds. H, I, O. So just tapping out sounds, not letters. Okay, so here's some phonological awareness activities and action.
We're going to show you how to do Tap It, Map It, Zap It, taken from Judy Dodson's 50 Nifty Activities. This activity develops and reinforces phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is crucial to reading development. It is the ability to attend to the speech sounds in the English language. Segmenting and blending sounds lays the foundations for phonics instruction. Phoneme means an individual speech sound. For example, the phonemes or sounds in the word dog are d, a, g. Phonemic awareness is about sounds, not print. In order to do the activity, you will need some sound boxes, chips or markers or candy, and then a magnetic wand to swipe the chips off. You can also use a home magnet. You will also need picture cards for the words. The first thing you'll do is draw a card. So the word is cat. Can you tap the sounds in cat?
At.
How many sounds in cat?
3 sounds.
So get a chip for each sound. Now let's map it. Say the sounds in cat and push a chip for each sound.
At.
Now zap it.
Cat.
Good job. Let's try another one.
Hat.
Tap the sounds in hat.
At. 3 sounds. At. Hat.
Good job. Keep in mind that some words will have less sounds than it has letters. And remember, we're just dealing with sounds, so we're only counting the sounds that we hear in the word. So let's try this one. The word is boat.
Boat. B-O-T. 3 sounds. B-O-T. Boat.
Good job. Let's try another one.
Shell. Sh-e-l.
3 sounds.
Sh-e-l. Shell.
Once students have mastered 3 sounds, you can try words with 4 or 5 sounds, like stamp.
Stamp. 5 sounds. Stamp.
So in your materials, you have a magnetic wand, some magnetic chips, and then also a board in the sleeve that they can use for the Elkonin boxes, pushing the chips, sliding it together. This is a great resource for you to use, and they're going to love it. Another resource that you've been provided with is some phonological beads. So just a pipe cleaner and some beads. And in the same way, they can tap or move the sounds in a word over and tap it. So just another activity that you can do.
Okay, let's practice for just a second, okay? I just gave you a decodable. You've got your materials, and so our words are going to come from the decodable. Sometimes you might have something that comes out like the little picture cards, but if you only have a book and you have your little bag of tricks with you, you could still do it this way too. I'm going to say this word, bad. Listen to the word bad. You say that word, bad. All right, let's tap bad, the sounds in bad. Add. Now take your chips and start laying those out to make the word bad. As you lay down your chips, then you say the sounds for each of the letters. Add. What's the word? Bad. And when you say what's the word, they can take their little wand and zip it right up. And so you can see how much joy that you have with that one. And so theirs will be multiplied by that. And just like Audrey said, some words when you say that word, like hiss has 4 letters, but hiss only has the 3 sounds.
Okay, so that's the top strand of the word recognition branch. The next one is on decoding. That's just reading words. And so what do we do if a student gets stuck on a word when they are reading? In the past, they may have been guided to look at the picture and think about what makes sense. That takes their eyes off of the word. We don't want that to happen. We want them to keep their eyes on the word so they're making those connections in their brain between the symbols they're seeing on the page and then the sounds that represent it. So here are a few things you can say to them. Keep your eyes on the word. Say the sounds in the word. Now blend the sounds together. All right, say it all together fast. And then we can ask, oh, does that make sense? Yeah, in this text it does. So that's great. So for example, if the word was skip, then you'd say keep your eyes on the word, say the sounds in skip, and they go sk, ip. Okay, now blend the sounds together. Skip. Say it all together. Skip. Oh, does that make sense here? Yes, it does. Awesome, you did it. Here is another quick video with more suggestions on how to support students when they get stuck.
Hello, this is Mrs. Corsack. I'm a reading specialist in Middletown Area School District, and today I'm going to talk to you about what to do if your child is stuck on a word. First thing you're going to do is have your child point to the word and look at every letter. We don't want our children guessing or making predictions about the word. We want them to look at the word and then point to every letter, especially the letters at the end, to make sure they're attending to the entire word. Next, you want them to stretch and say all of the sounds that match the letters. So you would have them say s, Now you're going to have your child blend the sounds together to say a word. So first, we're going to stretch them a little further apart. Sun. And then we're going to bring it together for sun. Now your child needs to think. They need to reread the word in the sentence. Does this make sense? The sun is hot. And yes, I was able to sound out and blend the word to make a word that makes sense. But what happens when your child reads the word incorrectly? If your child read, the set is hot, then you would need to be able to help your child. You can tell them the correct word and then point out the correct sound. So I would say, it's not the word set, it's the word sun. Look at the letter U in the middle. Letter U is the sound The sun is hot. And I'd have them reread the sentence using the correct word. We never want to just let a child's error go. We always want to help correct it and help them read the word correctly on the page. Tips that if it is just too hard, reading should not cause your child tears or frustration. So if you're reading something and your child is getting upset, you can have your child read less text and you can then read some of it to them. I've done this with my own children when they've taken books out of the library of things that really interest them, but the book is just too hard. I have them read a sentence or two, and they may struggle, and I need to help them through a few words, and then I'll read the next few pages. You also can suggest that they find books that are easier for them to read. You might say, let's take a break on this book, but I really know that. How about you get that book off your bookshelf that you really love, and let's practice reading that one instead. You also can reach out to your child's classroom teacher to find some good book recommendations from them. Thank you for listening to What to Do If Your Child is Stuck on a Word. And if you still have more questions, feel free to reach out to your school's reading specialist or to your child's classroom teacher.
So here's an example of roll and read. You just use a dice, you roll it, and then they have to read the words under maybe that number, or maybe you're doing a game and you get to color or X out after you read it and you're trying to get 4 in a row. You can make it happen however you'd like. There is a QR code here, but there's also a bit.ly address if you want to go to that website to look for more resources. All right, here is an example of what that might look like in terms of helping a reader with a volunteer in action. Again, this is from the University of Florida.
He's talking. Do you like hats, Olive Sue?
Uh-huh.
I like hats. You can give him that voice if you want to. Okay, let's keep reading. Here's his name again. What's his name?
Hal.
Hal, good.
Hats.
Close. This is one of our silly red words. It says as.
Has.
Good. Start from the beginning.
Hal has ink. Hat.
Good. Can you read that whole sentence for me again? You got it.
Hal has pink hats.
Good reading. Here's his pink hats. What else does he have? Keep reading.
Hal has teal hats.
Close. Let's look. This word has that A-N in it. Say the sounds.
Tan hats.
Good. So read the whole sentence one last time.
Hal has tan hats.
Good job. Great job saying each sound. Let me clear our marks. All right, here we go. Here's his name again. What's his name?
Hal has tins.
Good job saying the word. Tin. What's the first sound you see, Olive Sue?
Pot.
Pot. Good. Starts with P. Hal has 10 pots.
And
Has the A-N.
and pan. He
Close.
at hats.
Good. So let's read the whole sentence together. Ready? Hal
has
10
hats.
pot.
And
Say the sounds.
and pan.
Close. It's an A.
Hats.
Good job. Hal has 10 pots and pan hats. Here's the pots and there's the pan. All right, let me clear our marks. Next page. You're doing such a great job reading. Keep up the good work.
Okay, so now again, love for you to try it out. So look in your decodable text notebooks and review those. Think about words that maybe you would pull out to work on just phonological awareness, tapping sounds. How you might have them look for words that go with the decoding skill. So up at the top of the page, you can see, oh, this one is working on short I sounds, or this one is working on short A and short I and short O. So you would know exactly what they are working on. How might you help them with sight recognition, building up that automaticity? So take just 1 minute to kind of peek through that notebook as well.
Okay, so I want you to, with your notebook still open and thinking about that, going into a school, into a classroom, working with a student, you would be able to find the type of text that works better with that student. You won't just hand them the whole notebook. That's when this little sleeve comes in such dandy. You can take the text out, slide it in the back side of the sleeve, and then you've got one that you can work with from here. You can even take your little disc, and as you're reading, you could say, find the word hop, and they could take this disc and just lay it over that word. That way you're helping them to build that sight recognition with this as well. So on your card, I want you to think about this, and you can add this to your bookmark. This is where we're really giving students the book, the text, the one that they are going to read from. A lot of times the text might come out for a volunteer to work with a student that might look more like a library book. This one should look more like the decodable that you had here. So underneath here, I'm going to write the word decodable. And if that student doesn't have a decodable, then you've got those decodable texts that you could pull out based on where they are. Audrey said phonological awareness. That's all about sound. That's when you're going to say this word, tan. What sounds do you hear in that word tan? How many syllables are in tan? And if it is suntan, it has 2 syllables. Tan has 1, and so you can do it that way. How many sounds are in tan? An. You can use your little cubes. Decoding is where I see the sounds. I hear the sounds, but I also see the letters. It is both of those pieces working together. It's sounds and letters. So I'm going to put letters here. And then sight recognition is that whole word. I am now learning that word. I've got that word, and you saw in the video where the little girl called the color teal, and they went back and they talked about tan, and the teacher said, let's go back, let's read that one more time. And she even said, what's that word? And she had that little girl say that to make it a part of her sight vocabulary. So we want you to take just a little minute let this part process, the blue part of word recognition, and so talk with your partner about what you gathered from word recognition. Okay, so let's take this back. We've pulled both pieces out, that language comprehension and word comprehension, and we're going to put those pieces back together because to be a reader, it takes both parts. It takes that language comprehension and word recognition. And now you're seeing this whole rope together. Typically, we think about these skills all happening in kindergarten, first and second grade, but we know that we've got readers who go on up in grades who do not have these, and these are what we call our foundations. When you hear someone talking about literacy foundations, these are those. You can see how that rope twists with this part because that is what I'm bringing together as a reader. Down here on that rope, it's braided because it takes all of this going on in your brain to do that at once. You see it start being more automatic in the middle. And what we tend to think of, this happens as a third grader. This is where we want them to be doing more strategic work, being more automatic with what they're doing. And then we're pulling in that whole skilled reader by the time they're leaving elementary school and going into middle, high, and on adult. And so when you look at that, we want you to remember that this part is mostly good literature. We think about that as a library book is what I think about. And down at the bottom, it's more of that decodable of what it is needed for that particular skill for sounds and letters. And so Audrey's clicking through what I just said, that we're thinking about this as literacy foundations for K1 and 2, getting into that third grade in the middle, and then as they leave us for secondary school, they are that skilled reader.
And so another way to think about this is that in that K-2 range, they're going to need two different types of text because they need something for language comprehension and they need something for word recognition. By third grade, we're wanting those ropes to overlap so that they could use just a authentic text. But we know we have kids down here that are not able to. So you might have to go back and split up those types of texts. And hopefully they've got those strong skills by sixth grade that they can pick up any text they want and enjoy it. All right, so as we wrap up our time together, we do want to give you just a few other quick tips for as you go into schools to volunteer, just good practices as a volunteer.
So you might want to flip your card over for our quick tips. And so we feel like that the number one thing to do is build those relationships. When you are working with one-on-one with a student, if you were working with a small group of students. And so how are you going to do that? You're just going to be you. You're going to build that trust. You're going to have that positive energy that these students need because a lot of times they already feel like that they have been defeated because they're not keeping up with their peers. talk about yourself just a little bit. Let them know where you are coming from, what your job is, where you went to elementary school back in the day, and talk about their interest and your interest and how they could go together. Go ahead and make sure you call the students by name. If I say Audrey, she is most likely going to tune in to me a whole lot quicker than I just say, hey, look over here. Encourage those efforts. You saw that teacher doing that with the little girl who was on her very first few lessons as a reader, and that teacher was there to give her that support. And as a volunteer and as a mentor, we know life happens. And so if you can't make it on your scheduled day or scheduled time, just shoot the school an email, a phone call or something and say, hey, I'm not able to come today, but I will be there tomorrow at such and such time. Because the students get so excited, and the teachers do too, expecting the volunteers to be there.
You also want to work on supporting their oral language. We saw in the one video from Robert Small's Leadership Academy where they talked about if the kid's doing the most talking, then we know we are doing a great job. So one thing you can do is strive for 5. This is a routine where you're just thinking of when I'm sitting down with a conversation, I want to have 5 interactions back and forth. So the first one is an example of just in a non-academic situation. So Kim and I are going to be teacher, student.
Okay. How was your weekend?
It was good.
I'm glad to hear it was an enjoyable break from school. What did you do?
I went to my brother's football game.
Oh, wow. I bet he was very appreciative that you came to support him, and I'm sure he's feeling proud to be able to show you what he can do on the field.
So notice there were 5 interactions back and forth, and the teacher is expanding on what the child's saying and adding more vocabulary. Very appreciative, feeling proud. That's going to build up their language as well. We can also do it with a text. So you might say, what happened, or I'll be the teacher this time, what happened on this page?
They are mad.
Yes, she is very angry. How do you think she should have acted when she got upset?
She should have used her words.
I agree. She could have made a better choice by using words instead of kicking the tower down. So here's just another example within the text. So really striving for 5. Once I learned about this strategy, I started to pay attention more with students, and I realized, wow, I'm not doing a very good job of continuing that conversation, because you want it to be still focused in on one conversation. Try it out at home. See what it's like with your family.
Tip 3 is model reading for enjoyment. And so as you are working, and sometimes the teacher will ask you to read to the whole group of students. You might want to do that on special holidays. You might even ask to do that. So just make sure that you hold the book so that everybody can see, that you involve the students as you're reading. You're showing them the picture. You're asking them to turn and talk just like we did you today. We might stop and say, what do you see happening in this picture? Read with that expression. You'll probably have to practice that book before you go in order to do that even more. Or if the teacher just hands you a book, just say, I need 1 minute. I need to go practice my book right quick. Vary your pacing as you're reading. Fast when the gingerbread boy is running away from the little old lady and the little old man, but slow when the fox shows up. Make predictions before we turn the page. You can make the predictions, the students can make the predictions. And then just be enthusiastic as you're reading together.
Tip number 4 is come prepared. We are leaving you with, and thankfully to Ms. Renfro for providing these for you materials, but some other other things you might want to bring with you: sharpened pencils, maybe paper, erasers, dry erase board and marker. You can use this as a dry erase board right here, and you've got a marker in there. Bingo chips, pennies, cotton balls. You can use anything from manipulatives for phonemic awareness. Even Play-Doh. I've had rolled up balls and said, push the sounds in the words. They love those things. Maybe you want to bring some of your favorite child-friendly books to read to the students. Stickers when they leave, because they did a great job.
Quick tip number 5 is provide feedback. And when we say feedback, it's not just great, good job, but actual real feedback. Like when you saw the little student with the word sun, and the teacher went back and said, this is a U, this is the sound, let's go back and read that together. Their behavior feedback, and they're also academic. And so behavior would be, when you show up, you want that student to sneak out of the room so that they're not interrupting the whole class. And so when they get to the door, you can just say, you came out so quietly, thank you for doing that. Or you can say, remember when you go back to your seat quietly so that you don't disturb your teacher and your other boys and girls. And then you've got academic specifics that say more along these lines. You read this word as cup, but let's go back and look at it. It's got a T at the end. The word is cut.
Some other things you want to think about with collaborating with the teacher. Sometimes you may go into a school and then you're saying, the teacher's not sure, what do I do with this volunteer right now? So you can just offer up some ideas. Say, hey, would you like me to just be an extra set of eyes and ears while you're instructing? Just keeping an extra eyeballs on everything. Maybe you can offer to be an assistant to monitor and answer questions while the teacher's pulling small groups. You're just going to walk around. So that's another option. Or you could say, if you're really feeling confident, say, hey, I know you're doing stations right now. Would you like me to be one? And then the teacher gives you a little activity, and then kids will rotate to you. So just some options if you get there and then they're like, I don't know what to do with you.
Or you can collaborate on the school level. And if you choose to do that, if you know another language, you might volunteer to be an interpreter for students, for parent events. You might have a special talent. You might be able to play the ukulele, and you might want to go and share that talent with the students. Or if you, a lot of our schools now have homework clubs in the afternoon, and that might be something that works with the schedule too, that you go and host or volunteer to work during that homework club time.
So as we wrap up together, we want to say thank you for being here, but also thank you for just taking the initiative to go out into schools and to work with students that are in our communities. I don't know if you're familiar with the starfish story, but I will read it to finish this up here. So, as an old man walked the beach at dawn, he noticed a girl ahead of him picking up starfish and flinging them into the sea. Finally, catching up with the girl, he asked why she was doing this. She answered that the starfish would die if left until the morning sun. But the beach goes on for miles and there are millions of starfish, said the old man. How can your effort make any difference? The girl looked at the starfish in her hand, threw it safely into the waves, and said, it matters to that one. And that's what it means when you go into school and you're either working with a student, a small group, or a class. It matters for that one. So thank you so much. And we wish you good luck in your endeavors.